Mommytrack Daddy Whispers Podcast is now called Birth Agni Podcast.
Hello, listeners. Good morning, good evening, namaste. You're listening to episode 11 of Mommytrack Daddy Whispers. I'm your host, Divya. I hope your coffee is still hot or the tea that is ready to be poured into your favorite cup this morning. I hope that refreshes you for the rest of the day. And if you've just found a minute by yourself, all you beautiful mamas out there, please embrace all of yourself without thinking through the day. Do not think about what happened in the day. Do not think about tomorrow. Just stay. Stay on that sofa, in the kitchen if you're standing there, or just lie down on the bed and feel every part of your body speak to you. Tell you how you feel in the moment. In complete silence, surrounded by nothing more than just you and nothing more enormous than your presence. Close your eyes and breathe. How does that feel? Liberating? That is what we're going to talk about today. For all you mothers out there, in this episode, we are going to talk about liberating ourselves and diving into a space where we respect each other's mental state and be an ally rather than well meant critiques. And we have with us today our third guest, Prachi. She's a clinical psychologist and a psychotherapist with over a decade of experience in helping people realizing their potential into a healthier state of being. Prachi, I'm thrilled to have you here on our podcast, and I'm really thankful to have you on board. Please tell us about your work.
Hi Divya, it is a real pleasure to be here on your podcast because I love what you do, and this work of helping moms find their diva quotient is something that is very close to my heart, and
Thank you.
that's why it's a real pleasure to be here. And I just want to say a huge big hello to everyone who's listening to us today, and I just hope you have a fantastic day ahead. So, to get started, Divya, I am a clinical psychologist and a psychotherapist, like you said. I'm also a certified clinical trauma specialist. I help primarily people with relationship and intimacy issues, anxiety disorders, parenting issues, and recovery from trauma of emotional abuse. I founded the Emotional Wellness Initiatives. It is a online portal which provides exclusive online therapy services, and this is the new and improved version of India's first online counseling website that I founded in 2009. And that's it about me. And let's get started.
Yeah, thank you. And that is an amazing step, the one where you talked about the website. That is an amazing step in bringing awareness as well as availability in terms of mental counseling. Because जब भी मैं इसके बारे में सोचती हूँ, it comes to my mind how it's been conditioned in the society कि taking therapy and going to a counselor is more of a high society stuff. We don't need it in our normal lives. And very important step in making it a normal phenomena and more accepted in the society. And coincidentally, Prachi, I had this session in the afternoon at a workplace with a doctor over mental health, and there was this question that somebody asked, that what is the difference between psychology and psychiatry? So that will be my first question for you today. What is the difference, and for what problems one should visit whom?
That is an excellent question, Divya, and I'm really glad that you asked that because lately we've been having a lot of awareness about mental illnesses, but not so much about mental health professionals. So while people have now started gaining a mainstream understanding of what mental illnesses are, there's still not a lot of knowledge or information about if you're facing a certain kind of issue, whom you should go to. So,
Right.
yeah, I would love to clarify that. So, a psychiatrist is a medical doctor with an MBBS and an MD in psychiatry who is trained to diagnose mental illnesses and prescribe medications. On the contrary,
Okay.
a psychologist has an MA, an MPhil, or a PhD in psychology and is trained to help with mental illnesses and life problems through what is commonly known as talk therapy, which is actually psychotherapy, which utilizes research evidence based scientific techniques to help people solve psychological problems. Now, you asked me whom should go to whom. So, if I have to talk about the kind of issues, then if somebody is struggling with anxiety, anger, mood swings, relationship issues, past trauma, adjustment issues, etc., then they would first need to visit a psychologist. And if it is of a severity level which would be, which would require the help of a psychiatrist and additional help from medicines, a psychologist can always do an assessment and refer them. But the psychologist in this case should be the first line of treatment that somebody should look for. On the other hand, if somebody is experiencing hallucinations, like seeing or hearing things that are not there, or feeling paranoid that someone is plotting against me or people are watching me, or some bizarre thoughts like that, then it would be a good idea to see a psychiatrist, because this probably could be an acute episode which might require medicinal management before it can go to psychological management.
Okay, I think for all our daily life problems that we may face, and if that becomes extremely huge to our mental health, we should seek the help of psychology and the science behind that.
That's right.
Okay, and I wanted to also talk to you about this thing that's personal, but I wanted to bring it up that since the time that my daughter was born, or I became a mother, in other words, I think I'm in a space where I time and again feel that I'm losing it all,
Hmm.
and I have no control whatsoever. And the dips that I feel, they're far more intense, more frequent than they were before. And I am a new mother, so naturally, when I go through that phase, I think, क्या होता था हमारी mothers के साथ,
Hmm.
or elders in the family. But we've never been told anything on those lines. It's a happy picture, or थोड़ा बहुत हमें बता दिया जाता है. And when you actually go ahead and discuss the exact issue, तो निकल के आता है नहीं, problems थी. And probably there were more problems that we have today. So, how do you think mental health should be seen for new mothers and mothers of all ages?
Hmm. This is a very interesting point that you brought out, Divya, where, while motherhood or having children is such a, let's say, such a routine thing in families, yet you don't get a lot of emotional level information about it from your elders and, from other women in the family, as you get, advice. So this is a very important point that you brought out, because I think somewhere at some level, the society looks at becoming a mother as something, like going to college, or, like passing your 10th and 12th, that, you'll just go from one stage to another and it'll just happen, right? But, it's life, it's human life. Like, you are going to be literally having a seed planted inside of you, and, create a human being out of that. It's a huge deal. It's not like going from 10th standard to 11th standard and picking your subject stream, right? So, and I would love to say this to all the mothers listening to us, that a mother's journey starts way before she actually gives birth. Technically, the day the baby is born, everybody says, oh, you're a mom now. But, your journey starts long before that. It starts from the day she decides that she's ready to be a mom. And especially in our country, many times it's not exactly a conscious deliberate decision.
Yeah, agree.
It just happens in the flow. I read this metaphor once, where somebody said, you're in the elevator of life. So it's like, you get into the elevator at the ground level, and then you just keep climbing different levels. So it's like dating, and then marriage, and then kids, and, 1 2 3 4, you just keep going up the floors. So a lot of times motherhood is not a conscious deliberate decision, and from that day, from the day the first thought is planted in your mind that you want to be a mom, all through the journey of, trying to conceive, the actual conception, pregnancy, childbirth, and motherhood, there are several emotions. There are ups and downs, there are setbacks, and all of that. And she needs emotional and mental health support at every step. It's not that she cannot handle all this on her own, and most women do. But it's not necessary for everything to be a struggle to be truly worthwhile, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
Right. Like, and for new age mothers there are added challenges. There is so much information bombardment that it's hard to filter the relevant from the irrelevant. There's also added pressure to make the whole journey Instagram worthy.
Yeah.
There's also the constant pull between traditional advice which is being handed down to you and the tendency to refute it with new theories, because you're constantly like, this doesn't make sense, why should I do this? And yet,
Yeah.
because you're in that family system, you can't really go against it, and this creates this what we call as cognitive dissonance, where you believe one thing but you actually have to follow something else which you don't believe in. And the generation gap tends to create more friction than harmony. So, if there is a way to make this a smoother, happier, more pleasant transition, why not do it? Stories of motherhood and parenthood need to be exciting, pleasant stories. They don't need to be stories of martyrdom. And, taking care of mother's mental health ensures exactly that. It shouldn't have to be a narrative where people are talking about, oh my god, like how much trouble I went through, because nobody's giving you medals for that, right?
Right.
You've got to be looking back at this milestone in your life with pure happiness and joy, but it's more trepidation than joy. So yeah, talking about mother's mental health absolutely makes sense and is 100% essential.
Yes. Prachi, my next question is about postpartum depression. बिकॉज हम बहुत सारी चीज़ों के बारे में बात नहीं करते, तो ये भी एक ऐसा टॉपिक है जिसके बारे में हम बात नहीं करते, और वी आर ओपनिंग अप टू इट, टू दिस टर्म, बट व्हाट एग्जैक्टली डज दिस मीन, एंड कैन इट स्प्रेड लॉन्गर और कम बैक?
Right. That's important to talk about, absolutely, because while like we were talking about mental illnesses, so while now there is an awareness of the word postpartum depression, a lot of times when women do bring it up, it's not taken as seriously as it should. The family, and this is the same case with the usual depression also. Everybody starts to think that it's just in your head, or you don't have enough positive thinking in your life, and you should just get over it, and if you just try harder it's going to, like, go away. And then you start getting advice like, nahi koi baat nahi, sabke sath hota hai, thoda sa धीरज रखो and निकल जाएगा टाइम के साथ, खुश रहने की कोशिश करो, अच्छी अच्छी बातें सोचो. But with depression and postpartum depression both, your brain chemistry gets altered. It's not as easy as saying अच्छी बातें सोचो, because आपका ब्रेन आपको वो करने ही नहीं दे रहा है, तो it's not really under your control and it needs to be helped. But before we go there, let me just give you, because you asked for me in clinical terms what is postpartum depression, so let me just give you a basic idea of that. Postpartum depression, or what is actually known as perinatal depression, is a category of a mood disorder which can affect women during pregnancy and after childbirth. Notice that I said during pregnancy and after childbirth. When we look at this, we usually think that it's going to only happen after childbirth.
Yeah.
When That's why we use the word perinatal depression. The word perinatal refers to the time before and after the birth of a child. So, perinatal depression includes depression that begins during pregnancy, then it's called prenatal depression, and depression that begins after the baby is born, and then it's called postpartum depression. So, mothers with perinatal depression experience feelings of extreme sadness, anxiety, and fatigue, which may make it difficult for them to carry out daily tasks, including caring for themselves or others. मतलब इसमें simple चीजें like getting up in the morning and taking a shower for yourself also becomes difficult. In extreme cases, we have seen that mothers will have a tendency to think about harming herself or her baby also if it goes untreated for a long time. There is also a related term which is known as baby blues. Baby blues is a term which is used to describe milder mood changes and feelings of, general worry or little unhappiness and exhaustion that many women experience in the first 2 weeks after the baby is born, right? Because babies require around the clock care, so it's kind of normal for mothers to feel a little overwhelmed sometimes. But if your mood changes and these feelings of unhappiness, sadness, fatigue are lasting longer than 2 weeks, then there is a chance that a woman may have postpartum depression, and they will generally not feel better until they receive treatment. A psychologist can do standardized assessments to figure it out for them. If ignored or left untreated, it can go on for a longer time. You asked me if it can come back. So what if I have to speak to you clinically, then what can happen is that it can recede or get better, and after a gap of maybe 6 months or a year, if it comes back, clinically we are going to call it a depressive episode, maybe not a postpartum depression episode. But then we will look at the history, and we will look at the whole pattern, and we will figure out if this is like a ongoing mood disorder. So that's what it is going to become.
Okay, I did not know that pregnancy
Yeah.
can also be a phase where somebody could be depressed. Probably I did not have it, so I had a worrisome postpartum. So I had that very natural way of thinking where I thought probably postpartum depression is the thing. But again, Prachi, it scares me. अभी हमने जितने भी बात करी है that हमसे जो भी बड़े हैं they have struggled in their times and they always tell us about the good things
Yeah.
and they do not tell us about their struggles. वो हमें नहीं बताते हैं
Hmm.
कि उनके साथ क्या हुआ, उन्हें क्या क्या करना पड़ा. So is there a psychological purpose behind it? That was the question that I had on my mind.
Psychological purpose behind them not telling the troubles, you mean?
Right, right, right.
Yeah, actually, this is again, this is going to be an interesting viewpoint for you. We as humans have this tendency to run away from uncomfortable emotions. So nobody wants to face them, और ये हमें बहुत बचपन से कंडीशन किया जाता है. ये एग्जाम्पल मैं हमेशा देती हूँ कि आपके स्कूल में कुछ हो गया, आप स्कूल से रोते हुए घर पे आए, तो दो ही सॉल्यूशंस होते थे. या तो ये कि पूछा जाता था, अच्छा क्या हुआ, अच्छा ये हुआ, ठीक है, कल ये कर देना तो ठीक हो जाएगा, अब रोना बंद करो. या फिर दूसरा ऑप्शन होता था कि अच्छा ठीक है, अब हो गया ना, अब रोने धोने से क्या होगा, अब आंसू पोछो, चलो काम करो, इट्स ओके, फाइन, सब ठीक है. So we, and this is a very small example that I'm giving you, it happens all our life, and we grow up uh, just realizing that the moment we feel nobody teaches us at that point कि बेटा क्या हुआ, अच्छा ये हुआ, कैसा feel कर रहे हो, what are you feeling about this, let's just sit with this emotion. Nobody teaches us that. And therefore, we get conditioned to run away from these emotions. So, the moment an uncomfortable emotion comes in, we're like, oh my God, I have to do something about this. I have to distract myself, or I have to just get away from this. But we forget that, all emotions have been given to us for a purpose. There is a purpose for anger, there is a purpose for fear, there is a purpose for anxiety, all of that. But we have started calling them positive and negative emotions. No, negative and a positive emotion is nothing. It is just comfortable and uncomfortable emotions, and we have to stop looking at them like that. Because when we say negative, the moment we say that, our tendency is to just shut it down. And this is exactly the reason why, when when information is handed down between generations, when pregnancy happens, there's this tendency to only talk about the happy stuff, because one, you don't want to bring up your own uncomfortable experiences. Two, you think that if I only talk about the positive stuff, I will only pass on positivity. So that is why, when a new mother encounters something uncomfortable, she feels a little odd, because she's like, oh my God, nobody told me about this. So if this is happening to me, something must be wrong with me, which is a very damaging thing to do. Right, I'll give you my personal example. When my son was
Yes.
born, breastfeeding was extremely difficult for me. He could not latch on, and I could not produce enough milk. And oh my god, it was like the biggest invasion of privacy I have ever experienced. Like, at any point the gynecologist would feel free to just barge in and poke me or squeeze me, to check what
Yeah.
was happening. And I was like, what is going on? Because you have seen such happy pictures of mothers breastfeeding their kids,
Yeah.
and nobody ever spoke to you about lactation or breastfeeding.
Right.
And I was like, what's wrong with me? Why can I not do it? And I would see my son crying, and he would be hungry and crying, and my doctor would not allow me to give him a bottle, because she was like, no, no, you're supposed to breastfeed. And I know, I get it that it's important, but if he's hungry and I'm not able to do it and I'm frustrated, then my baby is also frustrated. And the moment I would hold him, babies can sense that, as a mother, you've got to be calm,
Yes.
right? So and I used to always feel that there's something wrong with me, until I started reading up, and then I started getting in touch with these lactation consultants, and I realized that this happens to a lot of people. Nobody tells you. You think that you're only passing on positivity, but you're not preparing them for what's reality. And when you do that, it actually becomes toxic positivity, because the person starts to feel that, oh my god, there must be something wrong with me, nobody told me this is going to happen, so it must not be happening with other people.
Yeah, so yeah, and that's very insightful because ये जो conditioning है हमारे साथ, it is gravely rooted and
Yeah.
it's helping us in no possible way. It's deteriorating our mental health again and again. So it would be safe to say कि it is important कि हमारी mothers and women around us, not just mothers, women around us who've gone through the same experience, probably the same age, उनको हमें बताना चाहिए what to expect postpartum. एंड उसके लिए बहुत ज़रूरी है कि वो अपनी कंडीशनिंग हटाएं कि अगर उनको कोई अनकंफर्टेबल सिचुएशन हुई थी, there is nothing wrong with them, it's natural. Prachi, tell me, it is right to say कि negative experiences should also be shared.
Absolutely. It is important to tell new mothers what to expect in its entirety. Don't create this. So I'm not saying that it's going to be a painful experience, but prepare a realistic image of it. We all know that prevention is better than cure, right? I mean, usually when it comes to mental health, we don't think in proactive terms. We wait for something to happen or escalate before we get help. It's like jab hoga tab dekhenge. That is the attitude when it comes to our own mental health. We don't do
Right.
proactive mental health. We will take walks, we will go to the gym, we will eat healthy and all that, because I don't want to fall sick in my 40s. But I'm not going to do anything to ensure my mental health
Yes.
until something happens, until I'm crying in my pajamas, and I'm like, pulling my hair out. I will not do anything about it. So but the but the fact is that, with the right skills and proactive measures, we can ensure that we maintain good mental health, which is as important as physical health. So if expecting women are systematically coached about not just postpartum depression, but also effective parenting techniques before the baby comes, it gives them a chance to absorb all that information without the new responsibility bombardment to complicate it. Because once the baby has come, she's already struggling with so much emotional upheaval, hormonal upheaval, and all sorts of societal bombardment, that then if you try and coach her on parenting techniques, nothing is going to go in. Like, there's this whole explanation of when we are anxious, why our brains stop working. Maybe we'll talk about it sometime, but it doesn't work. So when she's pregnant, you can coach her so that this works, because when the baby actually comes and the new phase begins, they are already equipped with the information and skills that they need to tackle it, and they can be well prepared, happy moms. I recently launched this emotional support group called Mama Sita. Mama Sita is actually Spanish for mom, sexy mom. Well, it's
I like
and
that.
yeah, like I said, moms got to have that diva quotient. They have to. It's all about this preparedness and coaching. I create this exclusive limited membership group of expecting women who subscribe to this service, and then I arrange and facilitate weekly meetings where we share, we vent as much as we want to, and we learn all of this together. This is the first of its kind of support groups in India. And since it is a monthly subscription model, moms also have a choice of renewing it for as long as they want. Because I think when you're going through such an emotional roller coaster all the time, you don't need this avalanche of advice the moment you open your mouth, and that is exactly what happens.
Yes.
The moment you start telling people I'm pregnant, oh my god, ab ye mat khana, ab aise mat uthna, ab aise mat baithna. And I remember, when my gynecologist visit used to happen, she barely had 15 minutes for me. Like, it was in and out, and there was such a dearth. And I decided that one day I'm going to use my training as a psychologist, and I'm going to create this space for women who are, on the way to motherhood, where they can just come and vent their hearts out. We will do that. It's going to be a safe, non judgmental space, and we are together going to learn what to do when the baby comes. Like the first time you made a presentation, you didn't know what a PowerPoint was all about. You made 5 presentations. By the time you actually went into a meeting to present, you knew what you were doing. It's the same thing.
Yes, and I've heard of some coaching in the West, but this is unheard of in India. We think traditionally we can pass on everything, but there are a lot of barriers because I would think that what I'm suggesting is just the way it should be. But we have to have a space where it's all inclusive, like you said, non judgmental. And I think it's going to be historic. We need that so much.
I seriously hope so.
Yes, and the next question is it comes from my own experience, from my family. Can depression be rooted in family history?
Hmm. Yes, it can be. Psychological illnesses like depression and bipolar disorders, they have a high genetic loading, as we call it, which means that they have a very good chance of being passed on from parents to children or between siblings. Research studies have found enough evidence to support this.
Okay. And now that we're talking about parents and family, I want to bring this up. हमारी आदत होती है ना कि as parents we want to control our children. तो अभी मेरे को होता है दिविशा के साथ
Yes.
कि ये कर रही है तो अच्छा रोक लो. And as I'm aging and the dynamics I have with my parents, I feel that there are times when I feel I'm being controlled, and I feel there is less acknowledgement of the fact that I am also in my midlife. I have a line of experience that I have with me, and probably I'll have preferences. So the question is, what is the psychology of exercising control and policing? Where does this come from?
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are jumping up and down on this question right now, saying, yes, yes. Divya, my God, you're so glad you brought this up. Uh, I think, एक तो, if we go by this age old saying, माँ बाप के लिए बच्चे हमेशा बच्चे ही रहते हैं. I think that just never goes away. But on a more serious note, if we are talking about a psychological angle, usually this, what we are calling policing and exercising too much control, it can happen due to any of the three reasons. One can be that the person who is being controlling feels insecure and helpless and tries to turn that around by controlling someone else. So, maybe there is a parent who is in their old age and they're starting to feel irrelevant. They are starting to feel like they don't matter or they are not needed. So, they would want to insinuate themselves in their kids' lives by get into everything that the child is doing, because I mean that's what they've done all their life, and suddenly they are not required to do that, so they don't know what to do with their time. Second reason could be that there could be a misplaced sense of entitlement, where one feels that they have a right to have a say in the life of others because they know better. And this can happen not just with parents, but it can happen with your building ka aunties, and it can happen with your relatives, distant relatives, because any of these people could feel that, oh, I know better than anyone else, and whether this person wants it or not, I am going to give this advice and they better follow it. Right, that's the attitude. So it's this misplaced sense of entitlement. And the third thing can be that there could be a false sense of justice, like, it happened with me, so it's only fair that it should happen to her. There's this very common line in families that अरे हमने भी तो देखा है.
हाँ. Yes.
So if you're facing policing or excessive control, maybe you want to try and figure out which of these three reasons apply, and then how you deal with it will depend on that.
Yeah, on the situation also.
Right.
And when you were describing these things, तो मेरे दिमाग में ये चीज आ रही थी कि जो reasons होते हैं कई बार इतने subtle होते हैं, and it's such a part of our subconscious mind कि हमें पता ही नहीं होता we are doing it in situations, but
Yeah.
we're doing it. Probably receiving it पे समझ आता है. तो I had this thought कि it's also a step down process. Like you said, हमारे साथ भी हुआ था, तो आपके साथ भी हो रहा है, तो there's nothing new. So there's no preventive action taken there. So it's like a step down from one generation to the next
Yeah.
generation. So is there a science behind criticism? And if yes, what is it?
Yeah, so I think there is no one scientific explanation regarding criticism, but the motives can range from a certain kind of personality organization to the perspective one holds towards the world. So for example, somebody has like what we call an OC personality, like an obsessive compulsive kind of personality, not the disorder. I'm talking about the personality. There are different traits. So if somebody has that kind of a personality, so they are very particular about things themselves, and they would be more likely to find fault in the way others are doing something. So, and that can be taken as criticism.
Yes.
So some people have a very narcissistic kind of personality, so they also would like to believe that they know it best, and then they would interfere in everyone else and criticize everyone else's work. So personality organization is one thing, and then sometimes people grow up in very bitter circumstances, and that's what they end up internalizing. They become bitter people inside. They don't see any good in their own life, and they can't see it in others' lives too. A perfectionist attitude can also sometimes lead people to be overly critical. So criticism, I would say, is a symptom, right? The problem lies somewhere else.
Makes
So
sense.
somebody, yeah, so somebody who's being critical, instead of us reacting to the criticism, if we want to deal with it, we have to respond to where it is coming from, rather than reacting to the behavior, which is actually a symptom or a byproduct.
And which is why we need to be more aware on the psychology side of things, and not just
Absolutely.
curb it under, put it under the sheets or curb it into a corner ki koi baat nahi mat ro. Like that.
Yeah, but I also understand that it's not an easy thing to do. Like, I am talking like this because I have years of training behind me and 15 years of practice behind me.
Yes.
But it's not an easy thing to do. Maybe, there are times where even in my own family with my mom, I would not be able to apply these things which I'm so easily talking to you about, because like I said, we are all humans, and we are conditioned to rather sweep things under the rug than to take them head on, because that takes more gumption, it takes more courage, it takes more resilience.
But yes, what we can do is talk more about it,
Yes,
so
definitely.
that suffering gets an outlet. And when it gets an outlet, कितने सारे जो symptoms हैं वो खत्म होना शुरू हो सकते हैं.
Absolutely. I love the fact that you use the word suffering, because there is a difference between pain and suffering. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is in our hands, whether we want to suffer from it or not. I love the fact that you use the word suffering. And yes, by talking more, we definitely can put a handle on the suffering. We may not be able to do away with the pain, but we can definitely deal with the suffering.
And that brings me to another question, that why are some people extremely self critical? And I'm saying this because I am extremely self critical. And some of us are self critical to the point of destruction, to the point of
Hmm.
affecting ourselves rather than anybody else, creating situations that may not be there in the first place. What would you suggest? How should women who are managing so many things, things that did not exist before probably this era. So, how do you suggest women should deal with it, and how can they avoid being extremely self critical?
Yeah, that is something that really needs to be talked about, because to a certain extent, all of us have this tendency to be self critical. And I always say this, that, we are all our harshest critics, our own harshest critics. When it comes to forgiving, we forgive ourselves the last, sometimes never, you
Yes.
know.
Um,
We'll readily forgive our friends, families, even colleagues for situations that are probably 10 times worse. But we won't do it to ourselves. We won't extend the same compassion to ourselves. Also, as women, I think we are culturally, and somebody needs to really talk about this, because we are culturally conditioned to be brave and to sacrifice. And somehow the impression in society is that the more a person sacrifices, the better human being he or she is. And uh, you know somehow women are supposed to be superhumans. I was speaking at this caregiving seminar one of these days, and we were talking about this, that women by default are all time caregivers, and the unofficial condition of being a caregiver is that you cannot complain. You have to be the caregiver, and yet if you're angry or frustrated on certain days, you are not allowed to voice it, because the day you voice it, your entire dedication becomes diluted somehow, as if I'm not allowed to have emotions. I can care for my family and yet be frustrated and angry on certain days. Why is it not allowed? It doesn't take away from what I'm doing for my family, right? She is by default somehow supposed to know how to manage everything and not demand any space or luxury for herself, because when she does that, that makes her shallow. But that's not okay. And this starts to catch up with women in their late 30s. I have so many clients in their late 30s and early 40s who one day wake up and realize that they have not set any boundaries for themselves all their lives, and now it's taking a toll on them. So to all the moms out there, I will give you the most important mantra. Please start setting boundaries today. And when I say boundaries, I don't mean walls. A lot of times when we talk about boundaries, people think that we are talking about walls, we are talking about keeping people out. But there's this beautiful quote I read once, and that's always stayed with me, that boundaries are not walls, they are there to show people where the door is. हम घर में रहते हैं, हमारे घर में एक दरवाजा है। वो किस लिए है? वो इसलिए तो नहीं है कि कोई हमारे घर में ना आए, पर वो इसलिए है कि सबको ये पता रहे कि कितने बजे आना है। अंदर आना है तो किसको ड्राइंग रूम में बैठना है, किसको बेडरूम तक चले जाना है। राइट। एंड अगर दरवाजा ना होता मेरे घर में, और जिसको जहां मन आता वो चले आता, जब मन आता चले आता, शायद अगर मैं आई एम अ क्वाइट पर्सन, मैं पहले कुछ ना बोलती और बाद में मुझे प्रॉब्लम होने लगती, तो मैं लोगों से कहती कि भाई मत बैठो यहाँ पे, तो लोग फिर मुझसे कहते पहले क्यों नहीं बोला। Do you see that? This is exactly what happens with boundaries.
yes,
And when the water goes above my head and I start speaking, suddenly I become the bad guy.
right.
So it is important that boundaries are set right in the beginning. Boundaries are doors, they are not walls. And if somebody around you cannot understand that, do tell them that. And boundaries always have to be communicated. They can never be communicated in silence, because if you're silent, silence can be interpreted anyway. So obviously the person in front of you is going to interpret it in the way that's convenient to them, not to you. So you always have to communicate. Start setting limits on how much you will take on, because you are certainly, like I said, not going to get a medal for doing everything. But if you set boundaries, you will definitely get more respect when you will need it the most. And if you have respect, you have dignity, you have peace. And another thing I want to tell everyone is that please stop feeling guilty for enjoying yourself. You are not a bad mother for having a spa day. You are not a bad mother for enjoying a chocolate bar in peace without sharing it with your child. You know, it doesn't make you a bad mother, because you always remember this: if you're a happy mother, you're the best mother, no matter what you're doing.
यस, और मुझे वो मूवी याद आ गई है शकुंतला देवी जो अभी अभी आई है. दैट
हाँ. Yes.
such a wonderful movie where they've shown you set out an example for your child by being yourself. And
Right.
there are so many important things, and especially जो अभी आपने बताया about boundaries. I think बचपन से ही हमें नहीं सिखाया जाता ना boundaries.
नहीं. हाँ, बिल्कुल नहीं. बिकॉज वही इम्प्रेशन है ना कि आप जितना अलाउ करो अपने ऊपर, आप उतने ही अच्छे इंसान हो, विच इज सच अ टॉक्सिक वे ऑफ लुकिंग एट थिंग्स.
Yeah, bear it, feel it, it's okay, मत रो.
हाँ, लाइक मेरे को आधा घंटा रोने दो यार, क्या प्रॉब्लम है? यू नो.
And I can cry for my own reasons. It's not supposed to
Yes.
be everyone in the world. It can be something very personal to me.
Absolutely.
It's very overwhelming. All of this information is very overwhelming, and but it's very insightful. It has to be that way, and हमें सीखना ही पड़ेगा. धीरे धीरे आएगा. Probably
Yes.
हर बार हम नहीं, we might want not win every time, but we'll still make a way ahead with a better state of our mental health.
Definitely.
And upon the crying thing that I've mentioned a number of times, I want to ask, why do mothers cry? After Divisha is born, I cry a lot more. Things I get overwhelmed very easily. फिर मुझे लगता है कि हमारी mothers भी they cry छोटी छोटी चीजों पे. From there, this question comes: why do women cry, especially mothers?
Ha. Okay. I have 2 points to make about this, first of all, before I tell you why this happens. First point is, it is a gift that we've got as women, that we can cry. You know, it is an amazing power of femininity that we have, that we have a way where we can express ourselves, right? Because it's not a fair question, why do mothers cry, because it makes it sound like it's only mothers who cry. Your podcast is called Mommytrack and Daddy Whispers. We've got to bring in the dads somewhere, right? You know, everyone
Yes.
cries. Someone on the inside and someone on the outside. It's just that it is more socially acceptable for a woman to cry than a man. And, you know, if a woman cries, she will most likely get sympathy. But if a man cries, he'll only get awkward silences or judgmental looks, probably. But that, you know, I honestly feel that as women, we have amazing resilience. This intuitiveness that we've been gifted with is our true power. And it is an empathy, you know, our ability to put ourselves in someone else's shoes, or the ability to feel someone else's pain. It is so powerful because it's not easy to do, to take someone else's pain inside you. It's a bloody powerful thing, right?
Yes.
And when you would do that, it has to come out, because it's, you know, somewhere has to come out, like, you know, somewhere it has to get balanced. And that is why, along with our intuitiveness and our empathy, we've been gifted this beautiful expression of crying. You know, that said, anyone who is under the humongous load of acting like a superhuman all the time will cry once they run out of their coping resources, you know, psychological coping resources. How much can you take, right? And also, you know, crying has many functions. Like you said, you know, sometimes you've seen your mom cry, and you do cry, and I'm sure every time you've cried, it's not because of the same reason. Like, it's not like, you know, there's one thing poking at you and that makes you cry over and over again. You know, sometimes crying is an expression of frustration, sometimes it's an expression of sadness, sometimes it's a cry for help.
And sometimes it's for catharsis, it's for release, right? Like sometimes you want someone to come and hug you, or you want someone to take care of you, and you just can't find the words, and you would end up crying. Because crying is given as a function to us humans. It's an evolutionary function, because when we cry we draw attention, and people want to come and help us, or at least ask us what's wrong. Infants, babies, when they cry, it's their survival depends on crying, because if an infant will not cry, we would not know when to feed it, right?
यस एंड हम शायद बिल्कुल ही उल्टा देख रहे हैं रोने को कि अगर हम रो रहे हैं तो वी वांट टू हाइड इट we don't seek help.
Ha.
We don't talk about why we are crying. So when I cry, I don't talk about it. I just want to be left alone and keep crying.
Right. And that like I said, it can be a beautiful catharsis, because sometimes it feels so much lighter to just let it out. So, and I'm glad you said that, just leave me alone, because when a woman, and in this case, because we are talking about moms, when a mom cries, and this is for everyone out there who might be listening to this, that instead of rushing to make sure that she stops crying because it's making others uncomfortable, let's be honest, we
Yes,
rush to somebody else to make them stop crying because it's making us uncomfortable. We can't see that, so
yes,
just stop.
yes,
Right? Instead of doing that, people need to sit with her. They need to allow her to release that pent up emotion, and then ask her simply, what is it that you need from us right now? Or, how can we help you right now? It's a simple question, but, it puts the intention in the right place. A lot of times people end up giving advice, ये कर लो वो कर लो, अरे उससे तो पूछ लो उसको क्या चाहिए.
और वो रो क्यों रहा
ठीक है,
है?
क्योंकि हाँ, हाँ, और क्यों रहा है, चलो ठीक है, वो भी मत पूछो, मे बी शी डजंट वांट टू टेल यू.
Yeah,
ये पूछ लो, व्हाट कैन वी डू राइट नाउ, व्हाट डू यू नीड फ्रॉम अस,
yes,
बिकॉज ओनली शी विल बी एबल टू टेल यू व्हाट शी. आप अपने दिमाग से माइंड रीडिंग नहीं कर सकते. एंड देन व्हेन यू इफ यू आस्क दिस क्वेश्चन, व्हाट डू यू नीड फ्रॉम अस राइट नाउ, एंड शी गिव्स यू एन आंसर, respect that answer. That's very important. Don't say that, अरे नहीं तुम ये बोल रहे हो लेकिन तुमको चाहिए तो ये, अरे वो बता रही है ना. Trust our judgment. So if you really want to be there for her, then be there for her, and don't make it conditional.
yes,
She shouldn't be pressured to give you the answer that you want to hear.
yes. A lot of the times we're seeking answers rather than plain listening.
Yes, absolutely. The moment somebody starts speaking, we are already thinking, what do I have to say in answer to this? Instead of really just listening, like just hear it, that's all you have to do. You don't have to be the fixer all the time. Neither does she have to have a goal every time for crying, She may just be feeling sad about something that happened 15 years ago. You really can't go back and change it, so might as well allow it to happen. That's
Yeah,
okay.
I really like how raw our conversation is going. I think that's how you talk with a psychologist. It goes really, really raw and deep. Okay, we've talked on the lines of a lot from the mother's perspective. How can we help women out there?
Hmm.
I was just curious when I was writing these questions. Has any father ever come to you seeking advice after becoming a parent?
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head, and I have to say no, not directly. But I don't think it is because fathers don't see a need for it, but I feel like there is a deeper reason. Again, due to cultural conditioning, somehow parenting is primarily supposed to be a mom's job. Evolutionarily, again, I can see why that would make sense, because no one can nurture like a woman. But now that our society is changing, our roles are becoming less and less stringent. It's not fair to assume that parenting has to be one person's job. Well, unless we are talking about a single parent, of course. Uh, and yet, fathers are kept out of the loop. Fathers are not naturally intuitive most of the time, so they also take time to figure out their baby. Most moms also take time, right? Then why is it that when a dad tries to pitch in and makes mistakes, he is told, oh, let it be, I'll handle it, tum rehne do, right? What is he supposed to do then? He will just step aside feeling awkward and incompetent. So if he doesn't know what he's supposed to do or where and how he's supposed to pitch in, then how will he come to seek professional advice? He's trying to maybe help, and then we're like, तुम रहने दो, ऐसे थोड़ी होता है, ऐसे करते हैं, just step aside. And then after a while the dad's like, यार जब मेरे से कुछ होता ही नहीं तो फिर मैं करूं ही क्यों, रहने
Yeah,
देता हूं ना.
responsibility
You know?
goes away because you do not feel for it.
Yeah. So, all the moms out there, I am telling you, you are creating barriers for yourself by not allowing these dads to learn by trial and error. Maybe first time he's not going to put the diaper on right. But if you're going to snatch the baby away and do it yourself, well, you will be doing it for the rest of your life. Let him put the diaper on wrong. You take the baby away and you do it yourself. One, you are taking on additional responsibility, and then you can't cry about it later that he doesn't do it, because when he does it, we don't really give them a chance to learn it the right way. He enjoys it too. Watch how he's doing certain things. There's always more than one way of doing something, and both ways
Yes.
can be right.
Yes.
Right? You've got to allow him to pitch in, because if you don't allow him to pitch in, one, you're shutting him out. Second, you're not allowing yourself to rest. You're also not allowing the natural male contribution of parenting to happen, which is also very important for your own peace of mind.
Yeah, and the bond
Right?
between a father and a child, the way it's with, because
Yes.
बच्चा आके यही बोलेगा मम्मा मम्मा मम्मा, वो पापा पापा भी बोल सकता है, but उसको उस रूटीन में आना पड़ेगा.
हाँ, लेकिन जब वो पापा के पास जाएगा, पापा अगर खाना खिलाएंगे तो हम प्लेट ही हटा लेंगे, तुमने 4 चम्मच खिलाया, वो 6 चम्मच खाता है. you know अरे and there's that joke which is there, no, कि where it's like the child going after mom and asking मम्मा ये कहाँ रखा है, मम्मा वो क्या रखा है, मम्मा इसका क्या करना है, मम्मा उसका क्या करना है. But when he goes to papa, the only question he has is, where is mama?
I really like this. And that brings me to the fact that we women have to allow our children as well as the fathers to be messy, which we do not allow.
Yes. Oh yes,
Yes. And
absolutely. I have this program that I run for couples, which is called Partners in Parenting, where I coach both parents how to be a team in raising a child. And believe me, Divya, it works wonderfully if right from the beginning you consciously become aware that you're a team. You're not mom versus dad. You are a team, and this really is, trust me, the best way to end gender stereotyping in your household, and it yields wonderful results. You not only bring up the child in a more effective way, you also put a stop to all that division of labor which is happening on an unconscious level inside your house, and that program works beautifully. That's why it's called Partners in Parenting.
And when we talk about, parenting is all about teamwork. So that also brings this thing into my mind that we actually give across to a child what we do. तो parenting वही है जो हम खुद अपने लिए कर रहे हैं. So if you're not doing anything for ourselves, it will never pass on to the child. So I'm really glad you have these initiatives in place, because I have not been able to find, because Jabhi, I mean, I was about to deliver. I was reading a book. I was trying to find out these coaching places where I could probably just go in and know how birthing happens, how labor happens, how am I going to, that is just a start point which I'm trying to bring in here. And I could not find anything. I used to go and ask my gynecologist, oh, you'll just go through, we'll talk to you and tell you right about in the moment when you
Yeah.
do not have any sense of what's going on around you.
Absolutely. At that time, you're just like, oh my God, just get this over with. Whatever you have to do, just do it. And then it doesn't become a conscious birthing process. I so hear you on that. You're so right.
Which is why all of this becomes important, and all the initiatives, Prachi, you've taken. I really hope they help all of us out there, and we accept the fact that we may need help.
Hmm.
And help is not really a question on our capabilities. It's just allowing ourselves a space where we can flourish in a better way with guided assistance. And Prachi, I've had a wonderful time with you here.
Same here.
Thank you. It was such a raw and, you know, beautiful conversation. And I'm very sure that it's going to hit a chord with our listeners.
Prachi, your final thoughts before we wrap up.
Well, Divya, as we wrap up, I would just like to say that I am so glad that we got here together today and we talked about something which is so important and yet so not talked about, which is mother's mental health. And I would just like to say to all the moms listening to us, or all the people listening to us who know a mom or someone who's going to be a mom, that never forget that just because you're becoming a mother, you're not losing your individual identity. You are equally important. Your role is equally important as an individual, as a mother. So never forget to take time for yourselves. Never forget to start setting boundaries. It's never too late, but someday you have to start doing it because it's not going to happen on its own. And with that note, I would just like to thank you, Divya, for having me here today and for being able to talk to people about something that is really, really close to my heart.
Thank you so much for coming on board. And now it's the time to talk about the parenting tip of the episode. The parenting tip of the episode is for all the mothers, all the parents out there, all you beautiful people. Take time out for yourself. I think everything that we've derived from this conversation is for you to take time out for yourself and talk to your 12-year-old self and seek some advice and wisdom into what you really are looking from life, what you're really seeking from life, and enjoy. If you like listening to us, please subscribe, download, and share. Do reach out to me with your feedback, any questions or stories. You can find me at my Instagram handle @divya.kapoorofficial. We'll come back with another episode. Till then, take care.